The Baltimore Ravens flocked up the season. I believe so. We discuss next. Hey, what's happening? Welcome back to The Bald Perspective. Let's talk. The Baltimore Ravens, I believe, have flocked up their season, have not increased their potential to win, make it to the playoffs, possibly do some damage in the playoffs, but I think they've actually decreased the potential to win. We have been talking for some time, probably since the Baltimore Ravens lost to the Chiefs and Lamar Jackson went down. We've been talking about this offensive line, how they needed to make at least one move to shore up the interior. No moves made. We had been talking about since the Metabike injury, how the Baltimore Ravens needed to create more pass rush, and the guys on the roster did not have that ability, had not shown that ability, and then out goes Odafe Owe. A week or two later, out goes Tavius Robinson with injury. And then they sign free agent Carl Lawson. Okay, maybe he can come in and do some things, but why was he available? That's the question. So that was nothing really to get super excited about. Now, could he come in and do some things? Sure, he could. But that remains to be seen. So we still were looking for the move. We were still looking for the Baltimore Ravens to potentially make a splash. Having been 1-5, then 2-5, then 3-5. Okay, bam. Now it's time for the Ravens to make their move, right? At least that's how I was thinking. That this is the season that the Baltimore Ravens make the big move. No matter what type of move it would be, let's make one. Got plenty of draft capital. But then we go get Draymond Jones, edge rusher from Tennessee. And he's a decent player, right? I'm not banging on him. I'm not saying he can't ball. I'm not saying he can't come in and make a difference, but will he make the difference? Excuse me. That's the question. Will he make the difference? And I don't believe so. You see, when you look at teams who recognize that they needed something and then they put their money where their mouth was, whether it was draft capital, whether it's going to be later cap space, they went out and did what they needed to do. A lot of the big names that were speculated about, nobody made a move. Maybe the price was too high. But not every team needed to make a move in the context of being a buyer because not every team had expectations. But on the contrary, the Baltimore Ravens were one that had expectations, and those expectations had begun to decrease drastically. Then we, win a couple of games and expectations kind of raised. Oh, the Baltimore Ravens could win the AFC North, which is the only path to them making the playoffs. And then we don't do much at all. This offensive line is still trash. The Baltimore Ravens are still going to be vulnerable against the run defensively. And then the back end. You trade away a corner, but you don't bring in a corner. The Baltimore Ravens have flocked up this season. I can't hold them totally responsible for what happened in the offseason because me, myself, just like many others, believe that the Baltimore Ravens had one of the better rosters. And I believe that EDC had done his best job in his whole tenure as the Baltimore Ravens GM, addressing a lot of what we believed as a fan base to be the problems. He said that the offensive line will be better this year than last year. Okay, so bam, you roll in with Voorhees and Falele. Then you bring in Noteboom to be the backup to Ronnie Stanley. Okay, that was supposed to be an upgrade. You get Ben Cleveland off the scrap heap once again. You bring him back in to be a depth piece. And Corey Bullock showed something in the preseason, and you keep him in house, and oh man, we got some depth, and we got depth everywhere. But then nothing that we thought was going to happen happened, and so the way to build this team, the way to improve this team, could only have been with some trades because the season has already started. And probably the biggest name that went was, that we would have had our eyes on would have been like a Quentin Williams defensive tackle. But Dallas knew they needed something, and so they went out and got it. Cost them a first and a second. And then the Jets fire sale, they traded Sauce Gardner. So they are absolutely in a flat-out rebuild mode. So if they are trading those level of players, we couldn't have went up there and grabbed one of their guards, who are definitely playing better than our guards. We couldn't have went up there and got a John Simpson, somebody we know well, who's played well in New York. We couldn't have went out and done that. We just twiddle our thumbs, play it safe, be cheap, and we end up with Draymond Jones. Now here's the tragedy. Here's the tragedy. Why I think the Baltimore Ravens have flocked it up for this season and have flocked it up for next season. And the reason why I say they flocked it up for next season is because there's only 36 players under contract going into the 2026 offseason. And even if you got 10 draft picks, that's not valuable because you're not going to keep all 10. So what's the point? And then you don't take 10 draft picks and fill 17 spots of a permanent roster. You see, what we've done is not drafted well, so we don't get return on investment. What we've done is we've held on to players too long versus flipping them for players who can have some staying power. A Mark Andrews, for an example, is a guy who's on his last season. Why not flip him for a guy, any position group, who has a couple of more years on his contract? That would be one more guy under contract for next season. Guys, we're in some real trouble. And I think our Super Bowl window, if we don't find some magic this season and bust it open, it's closed. And I put this squarely on the head of the Baltimore Ravens organization. What the product is on the field, I put on the coaching. But how this roster is able to be sustained, I put on EDC. And we've done a terrible job. I got more commentary coming for you before I even get into the Minnesota versus the Ravens game. But man, I'm disappointed. Actually, I'm borderline pissed off, man, because it's sickening to just watch this team do the same thing over and over and over again. Inactive. We don't make any big moves. Always trying to play it safe. And what are we trying to keep cap for? What are we trying to preserve cap for? What's the benefit of having $12 million in cap space, or maybe $10 million in cap space after the Draymond Jones trade? What are we going to do with it? Man, listen, do me a favor, hit the like, subscribe so this video gets out, man. I want to hear from you guys. If you guys are just as pissed off, man, just jump into the comment section, post what you want to post. It's my obligation to touch base with each one of you in the comment section. So hit that like, subscribe, touch that notification bell. I'm out.